The Islanders' master plan has been revealed, as Rookie Camp has highlighted several players who are NHL ready, including one player who is the solution to the Islanders' issue in the top 6 forward position. We're going to break it all down on this episode of Islanders Digest and talk about what makes a successful training camp for all these rookies for the New York Islanders. As some rookies, it's going to be just about getting a bit of experience, and for others, it's going to be about not just making the team, but making the team in high impact roles that can really change the course of the season for the team. Also, I do want to say we just reached 1,700 subscribers on the channel. Appreciate all your support as we continue to make Islanders content every single day. And I'm so glad now that we're getting close to the point that we can actually talk about Islanders games. Unfortunately, there are no rookie matchups for the Islanders where their prospects are playing other teams' prospects. But be honest, compared to other teams, the Islanders prospects, a lot of them have a legitimate chance at making an NHL roster. So really, do we want to see them beat up against the Rangers prospects? It would be fun, but I'm okay waiting until I believe they start on September 21st. And for now, what we have is an intense Islanders rookie camp, and Stefan Rosner has identified several standouts for the New York Islanders. Those standouts are Schaefer, Shabanov, Ritchie, George, and Mathew. And I believe these are the 5 players for the New York Islanders that have a chance to crack the NHL roster. We talked in a previous video about Matthew Schaefer and why I believe he is going to be in the Islanders' top 6 on the defense this season. I'm going to link that in at the end of this video. But who I want to focus on today is Maxim Shabanov, who is really showing through this rookie camp that he does not belong at all. And yes, we're going to see how he performs against NHL players in a few days. But based on the speed and the elusiveness he's seen, this is not just a player who's going in to play the top 9 for the Islanders. He is going to be a top 6 forward. And I think he has a clear chance to prove that he deserves to play in the top 6, whether it be with Horvat or Mathew Barzal, which will definitely help the offense for the Islanders. Because if there's one weakness with this team, aside from the fact that they don't really have a true number 1 defenseman, at least not yet until Schaefer develops further, as he will in the coming years. If there's one other weakness, it's that they really don't have a clear first or second line. They have good players like Mathew Barzal and Horvat, but they don't have a line that really scares teams. And Shabanov can potentially help be a solution for that. In particular, I think he is a player who can play very well with Mathew Barzal. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the video. But right now, I just want to talk about some of the things that have really impressed me about Shabanov and his showing so far. And one thing that's clear is Schaefer and Shabanov, compared to the other players participating in this rookie camp for the Islanders, have ridiculous speed. They are significantly faster than the rest of the bunch. And that's notable because, again, there are other standout players in this group. Again, Matthew is a player who has been close to cracking NHL lineups in the past. A lot of us were disappointed he didn't crack the Islanders last season. And if anything, it's really good to see him back in this list of standouts because you want to see him progress again. While he did have a down year in the AHL last season, that doesn't mean he can't still be an NHL player. We're going to talk about what my expectations are for him going into actual training camp because this is going to be a really important one for him. But other players, Ritchie, George, these are players who are also expected to potentially make an NHL lineup. And for Schaefer and Shabanov to just absolutely show how much faster they are, it's really impressive. What it also impresses me about Shabanov is how well he's handling physicality. Again, this is against the rookies, but these are some big guys. I mean, Alex Jeffries, you guys on the channel were talking all year about how you wanted to see Alex Jeffries play on the 4th line for the New York Islanders. This is a man with an NHL-ready frame, and Stefan Rosner is tweeting about how he's sending him down on his butt winning puck battles because he's so strong. Shabanov has actually talked a lot in recent interviews about how much pride he takes in his strength on the puck. And I think there was a lot of concern about Shabanov's size being 5'9", but one thing I do have to point out and remind everyone, this is a player who played in the KHL. He was not playing in college, he was not playing in junior. He was playing with men, and yes, the KHL isn't quite as physical as the NHL, but they have some really big guys. I mean, Daniil Prokhorov is currently running around in the KHL doing nothing but throwing hits on a 4th line, and he is a 6'5" absolute behemoth. If Shabanov can deal with stuff like that, because again, he was one of the biggest players in terms of skill output in the KHL. He was the #1 target for every team that he played against. If he's able to put up 67 points against that and really not get phased by physical contact, I think he'd be just fine in an NHL role, especially considering other teams are not going to be focusing on Shabanov, especially if he's playing with a player like Bo Horvat and Matt Barzal, and even he is focused on a bit more. It's clear to me that he can handle a bigger player and come out just fine, especially considering he has those skills. When we talk about a small player, there are skills that you need to overcome being slightly shorter, and one of them is speed, and the other one is intelligence in your game. Shabanov, every single scout that talks about him, he has both these qualities, which is really encouraging. These are just more tweets from Rosner talking about Shabanov and how really he's good at making plays really quickly, which is important. One thing you worry about when it comes to the NHL, sometimes there's a little bit less time when it comes to getting the puck, and Rosner is saying right away he's really good at finding openings, even though the ice is smaller, and he's getting handcuffed here and there with passes, and he's making really good plays quickly, which is exactly what especially considering you want Shabanov to be a scorer for the New York Islanders. Realistically, you're playing him in the top 6. Not only does he need to put up assists, what the Islanders really struggle with is goal scoring. And having scored 20 goals in the KHL twice, I think this is goal scoring that's going to translate really well. We've yet to see Siplikov's goal scoring completely translate. I think Shabanov is going to be a different story. The more I see from this player clips, everyone talking about him, he's going to be in the top 6 for the New York Islanders. Perhaps he's not going to earn it right away. I honestly think the lines for the Islanders, there's going to be a lot of mixing and matching. Oh, sorry, these are the defensive pairs. The lines for the Islanders, there's going to be a lot of mixing and matching early on. But Shabanov, he's currently listed as the 3rd line right winger for the Islanders, especially considering he plays right wing and center. He can play left as well. It's not listed, but he can play all 3 forward positions. You're going to see him try it out in a lot of different positions. Probably not center, especially considering his size, and the Islanders are already pretty deep at center. But you might see him take a face-off here and there, especially if Barzal is struggling in the dot. And for me, he's definitely going to get looks, especially as these lines get mixed around, because I don't think Patrick Waugh will be satisfied with either of these lines. He's going to want to try things out. And Shabanov, if he has a good training camp, which I expect him to do, especially with what we're seeing so far, I really expect him to contend for the top 6 for the Islanders and really potentially bring more offense than some of the options that are currently there. I love Kyle Palmieri. He is a great, consistent goal scorer, but you need more than 50 points from a first-line winger. I believe Holmstrom has more to his game. Drew, and we will see what he's able to bring on the Islanders now that he is no longer playing in Colorado. But other players like Anders Lee, the goals are great, but you need to see more production from your top 6, and especially on the power play, and that is where a player like Maxim Shabanov with so much skill can really excel. We're going to talk about some of the other rookies now and really what their expectations are. One thing I really noticed from the standouts, and Stefan Rosner is tweeting about this, and we have other Islanders reporters also tweeting about it. And one thing I've noticed right away is nobody is really tweeting about Alex Jeffries. Not really ideal, especially considering Alex Jeffries was a player a lot of fans were excited about last season, really wanted to see him play to end the year. I don't think this is a huge red flag yet, but you would want him to be included in that list of standouts. Ideally, Alex Jeffries is not making the Islanders out of training camp, but once training camp begins, his role, the same as Matthew Barzal, is to show when somebody gets injured, they are the #1 call. Well, that's what they're trying to be. They're trying to be the #1 call-up for the New York Islanders. And as of right now, based on how training camp is going, I'm assuming that call-up is going to be Mathew Barzal, assuming another player makes the lineup, which is not a guarantee. We're going to talk about him right now. Next, we're going to talk here about, let's quickly check that there's no one else on this list that I want to cover. Some of these players, the big goal here is just getting some experience in training camp. That's all it is. Jesse Numry, I do want to note, is actually getting knee surgery, so he will not be participating. He's out for the next 6 to 8 weeks, similar to what Barzal's situation was at the end of last season. Joey Larson was a player who only played a few games in the AHL last season. I really liked his game. I want to see what he does next season. And the rest of these players, it's just good for them to get experience. They don't really have a chance at making the Islanders, but perhaps having a good look can help them get more ice time in the AHL. Looking at the rest of this list here, Callum Ritchie is a huge question mark for the New York Islanders. He's looked really good, and I'm really excited to see how he looks in actual training camp, because one thing that's a bit more difficult to tell when Callum Ritchie plays, he doesn't dominate in the way that some players. He's a very smart player, and he's really good at playmaking, so really, to see how close he is, you're going to have to give him an opportunity to play with NHL players and see if he's connecting, see how his defense is looking against stronger players. He has put on a lot of muscle. He is now 200 pounds, which is definitely notable and gives him a better shot, because now there's nothing holding him back in terms of his physicality to make the NHL. It's just about whether or not the assist, the playmaking is going to be there right away. I believe if he proves in training camp that he can score, the Islanders will find a way to put him in the lineup. It actually was noted recently. We've been talking about whether or not the Islanders are willing to play him at wing to start. He said he is willing to play wing, so that does not limit him to a center position. Means the Islanders don't necessarily have to move J.G. Pageau to play Callum Ritchie in the NHL lineup. It's a deal that he does get some playing time at center this season, but that just makes it so that is not something that has to happen right away. Luca Romano is a player I find a bit notable just because I think his skating is really impressive, and yet it doesn't stand out when you watch him playing with players like Shabanov or Mathew Schaefer. Shabanov, we've already talked about. At this point, it's not about whether or not he's going to make the Islanders roster. That is clear. What's more the question is, how high is he going to get right away? And really, how high can he progress throughout the season? Is he a player who's going to cap out around 50 points? Or is there another level to his game? Because he's a player who's looking very exciting, in my opinion. You still have to see how he handles NHL physicality. Perhaps I am kind of undermining that aspect of this, but just from what I've seen, I think he's going to have no issue in handling it. He's really an impressive player, and really similar to some of these KHL players we've seen in the past that have actually succeeded in the NHL. A lot of times early on when the player doesn't work out, there are some red flags early on in training camp, and there is nothing like that in terms of Shabanov so far. On the defensive end, things are definitely very interesting. We've talked a lot about it, and there's a video if you want more detail on whether or not Matthew Schaefer is going to make the New York Islanders. I'm under the impression that while he has to prove he belongs, the speed is just going to be too much to send him down. In addition, Isaiah George is really fighting for a position, and I think there is a situation here where both of these players can make this team, which is really exciting. This is going to be one of the most intense training camps the Islanders have seen in a very long time, and this is exactly what Matthew Darche wanted to see. In the past, with Lou Lamoriello, we kind of knew that spots were just going to be given to players because there really wasn't that much competition. It was either Matthew Maggio or Pierre Engvall, and that was the end of things. Now, not only do you have the players who are on the roster, but even some of the extras, Kyle McLean, Pierre Engvall, Ethan Bear, these are all players who can have a really good training camp and force their way onto Patrick Waugh's lineup. And one thing Patrick Waugh has made very clear is, if you earn your minutes, you will play. He doesn't care what your name is. He doesn't care how much experience you have. If a young guy is playing better than you, then you're not going to play. So, and what's really interesting here is I definitely think there's a case that perhaps Isaiah George can make the right side of the Islanders defense. I do think if Schaefer makes it, he's going to be given that left side that's currently being held by Boqvist, who is a right-handed defenseman. It just makes sense to play Schaefer, your number one prospect, on his natural side. But Isaiah George has talked in the past about liking his offside, and considering he's supposed to be more of a defensive defenseman in the first place, if he's comfortable there, I would love to see him try to make that spot instead of a Scott Mayfield. And then in addition, when it comes to the defense, because Sean Aitchison wasn't on the ice today, they said it was just a maintenance day. He's not going to make the club, but it would be really good, in my opinion, to give him some experience just playing with NHL-sized guys. Try to play physically with them to kind of learn where he needs to take his body to the next step. Some other defensemen of note are Cal Audulus and Jesse Pulkkinen. These are two players we've unfortunately seen in recent years the Islanders go through a lot of defensive injuries, and if that does happen again, which I really hope it doesn't, but these are two guys that might be the next Isaiah George for the New York Islanders, especially Cal Audulus, who was picked previously in the second round. He hasn't quite yet taken that step forward that you want to see, but he has been solid defensively in the AHL. And again, it's hard to grade any of these players based on what they did in the AHL last season because the Bridgeport Islanders were a complete disaster. But Cal Audulus, while he's not looking to make training camp and the same, not looking to make the team right off training camp, that's not going to happen. The same you can say for Jesse Pulkkinen, who has played well overseas, is now trying to translate his game, has an absolute massive frame if he can put it all together. These are both players who aren't going to make the team right off the bat, but they can make a big impression and potentially get that call out when they're needed, which is something that Isaiah George took a huge advantage of in previous training camps, and I'm really looking to see them do. So far in the rookie camp, they have looked decent, but they haven't taken those big steps that you really want to see, where we were talking about last summer how good Isaiah George looked. Let me know in the comments what you think of all these players. Who do you think is going to make the Islanders? Who on this list are players that you're a little disappointed with? I'd love to know what you think in the comments below. As always, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm your host, Patrick Nilan. Catch you on the next episode of Islanders Digest. Let's go, Islanders.